This is the SpaRetailer Podcast, where we talk retail, business, and all things related to the hot tub industry. I'm your host, Megan Kendrick, owner of SpaRetailer Magazine. Today on the SpaRetailer Podcast, I am happy to have my friend Susan McPhie, the VP of Business Development and General Manager at Silkwater Solutions, which makes Silk Balance, the orange bottle. If you don't know what that is, you know the orange bottle, as Susan and I just laughed about. But Susan, I'm so excited to have you on because, like I said, you and I have gotten to know each other pretty well over the last few years. But when I was looking at these questions, there's still some of these things that I don't know about you. So this will be fun for me to get to know you even better than I already do.
Thank you for inviting me on. It's a huge honor. I listen to your podcasts all the time, and I feel really excited and grateful to be invited to be one of the people that you're chatting to.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I mean, and I'm not having you on just because you're my friend. I think you have an interesting story to tell about, how your journey in the business and the evolution of the company and, working as a woman in the hot tub industry. And so yeah, we have lots to talk about.
I'm excited.
So, I mean, we'll just start at the beginning like we do with everybody. I mean, kind of what is your personal background? Where did you grow up and go to school? And let's go all the way back.
Sure. So I am Canadian. I live in Canada. I was born in Montreal, which is the French part of Canada. So I do speak French, which is a fun thing once in a while. I'm really good at speaking French if I'm at home in Vancouver, which is where I live right now. If I go to visit my family in Montreal, I forget some of my words. But I've been on the west coast of Vancouver for, 35 plus years now. So this is really my home. I love the West Coast. I spend a lot of time with my family skiing on the weekends when I can, and I'm lucky that I never have to shovel snow, which is not common for the East Coast.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I feel like if you don't live in Canada but you picture Canada, I really do picture it pretty much always covered in snow. But I mean, it's like anywhere. I mean, some places, yes, and lots of places, no. And you just don't think about that when you're, way down south.
Yeah. So our Silkwater Solutions office is just north of Seattle. Our US company is based in Washington State. So being a border city, it's really easy for us to get back and forth. Yeah. But we do have very mild temperatures, and the West Coast is such a great place to live. We have a really huge focus on the outdoors and wellness, which sort of feeds really well into being a part of this industry. In terms of family, I grew up with I have one younger sister, and with my mom and my dad, and I now am married, and I have 3 stepkids, which they're all grown now in university. And we have our lovely pup, Hope, which is she's a sweet dog. I'm wearing black right now, and usually you can see remnants of Hope's fur on me, but not today.
Yeah.
Part of my background, I grew up, when I went into university, I had always thought that I was going to work for the United Nations. That's something that
really?
I was. Yeah.
I'm so
Yeah.
interested. I did not know that about you.
Yeah. So this was, back in the late 90s, and the International Criminal Court in the United Nations had just been formed. And I thought that was a really cool thing. And there was a woman named Louise Arbour, who was a part of the Supreme Court of Canada, and she was named one of the first judges. So I had a ton of admiration for her and thought I would always go down that path. And as my sort of schooling and career evolved, I went into, after graduation, I remember saying to my dad, I just want to travel for a little while. And he said, well, that's great that you want to travel, but there's student loans and you've got to go to work. So
Yeah.
I decided, well, what am I going to do that allows me to travel and make some money at the same time? And I ended up going into the airline industry.
Oh.
So I worked as a cabin safety trainer for a major airline in Canada. And part of that was, the benefit of that was I spoke French and English. So I got to work alongside Transport Canada. But that was sort of the first introduction into education and training, which I'm really passionate about now in our industry. Yeah. I would train all of the flight crew on different safety procedures and first aid. And I really loved teaching and education. So I think that was without knowing, that was kind of the first introduction into that. I
Funny
then
how
went.
that isn't that funny how that works? Like, you have those early experiences and, like, beginning jobs that you just kind of are like, "Oh, I'll just do this," without a whole lot of, forethought or, like, long-term thinking as to what it could be, and then, you find your thing and you're like, "Oh, who would have thought?"
Yeah, I just kind of always lived in the background and then later on culminated. I do a lot of education and training in the industry for
Yeah,
different industry events and also for all of our dealers as well. So that was, yeah, so that, and that is something I'm really passionate about now. As my career evolved, the airline unfortunately shut down. And then I went into work in real estate development for a major real estate developer in on the West Coast. And then after that, went to work in the alcohol industry. I worked for a company that made Mike's Hard Lemonade, and I owned a bunch of wineries in Canada.
okay, okay.
So those 2 industries were really heavily male dominated.
Yeah,
And that was, an interesting, it was very innovative industries to be a part of because things are constantly changing, which I liked both of them.
yeah,
And that sort of was the introduction to an innovative industry, but the introduction into what it was like to work in a really heavily male dominated industry as well.
yeah, for sure.
So that brought me to about, I think, 2010 or 11, which was the first time I started being a part of Silk Water Solutions.
Yeah. I mean, I think Mike's Hard Lemonade was, like, my first go-to drink as a college student.
Yeah,
You get something, like, easy, and you knew what it was and what you're getting, and yeah, so that I feel like I drank quite a bit of Mike's Hard Lemonade there for a little bit.
yeah, I think we all did. I don't, I think even my kids now probably start off with the ready to drink stuff and, they'll drink other stuff now. I don't think I could ever go back to enjoying
Agreed,
any of those.
agreed. It has been many years since I would have imbibed in a Mike's Hard Lemonade, but it's kind of funny to think back. So you've kind of brought us to the place where you started working for Silkwater Solutions, but before, like, so how did the company get started and get off the ground?
Yeah, so it started in 2007, and it was founded by my father, who had previously been the CEO of a major hot tub manufacturer in Canada.
Okay.
And after he left that company, I think what his learnings were, the one thing that was really missing was the simplicity in water care, because at that time, everything was really traditional chemicals that people were using, and it was a lot of work for them and a lot of frustration. So, and the thing he always would say was that the traditional chemicals are there to treat the symptoms instead of actually treating the problem. So, is there a way that we can simplify water care for customers, align it with the goal of wellness and making the water as natural as possible, but actually treat the root cause of water problems? So, instead of being a problem solver, is there something we can come up with that's a problem preventer?
Yeah.
So he kind of believed that there was a better way to do water care, something that was simpler, something that was safer. And that belief evolved to the development of our patented technologies, right? So when you
Yeah.
know that you've come up with something really unique and really different, you want to make sure that you're protecting that investment. And we've always, regardless of how many innovations and changes in our formulation over the years, we've already always really made sure that we invested in protecting that patented technology, not just for the business itself, but also for everybody that sells our products as well, all of our
Yeah.
dealers and all of our retailers.
Yeah. How did he go about, like, creating it or coming up with it? I feel like, I don't know, there's part of me that just doesn't understand how you do that, right? Like, how do you go from, "How do I fix this problem?" to, "Here's a patented, solution to this." Like, how do you even start working on that problem?
You surround yourself with really smart people.
Okay.
We have I don't know if you've ever met our chemist, Colin Taylor.
I have. Yeah.
He is absolutely brilliant. And he had worked in different types of applications and creating different types of formulas for different industries in the past. And it was really through that conversation of that evolution is how can we look at some different types of ingredients and components that combined will solve the problem. So I think it was at first identifying what is the actual problem. So
Yeah.
we knew that when it comes to pH and alkalinity, those are sort of the foundations of water care. So what are the different things that we can use that aren't the harsh ingredients that would provide stability for those. So it
Yeah.
was sort of that, and that was sort of the road that they went down to really tweak and evolve the formula. And then throughout the years, as the evolution of different applications and different technologies came out for hot tubs itself,
Yeah.
we were constantly evolving our formula to make sure that we remain compatible with the evolution of the different technologies that were being introduced, whether it was the monitoring systems, or whether it was the salt generators that started to become really popular
Yeah.
in our industry. And so it was really, I think it's really about starting off, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And then matching up the different types of ingredients that can go into that formulation. And then you have to go and file for the patent, and then you have to give a whole bunch of information and paperwork, and then,
Yeah.
file for the different patent offices around the world, because you want your patents in Canada and the US and
Right.
the UK and all over. And yeah, so it's a really interesting process, but it's the smart people that really get you to where you want to go. So my
Yeah.
father was very entrepreneurial and very driven, and, the ideas person, and bringing the ideas to life in a way that's unique is really how Silkwater Solutions evolved its technologies to
Yeah.
have them.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think most people probably know, but for those who don't, could you just explain what Silk Balance does and how it helps with these issues that we've been talking about?
Sure. So part of the name itself, so when they were coming up for the name, it's called Silk Balance. And two of the major things that it does is it softens the feel of the water and makes your skin feel soft. So that's why we called it silk.
Yeah.
And the balance part is about the maintenance and the stability of the alkalinity and the pH. So when you have those two combinations together in a formula, it's added to the spa once a week. And not only does it stabilize the pH and alkalinity and soften the feel of the skin in the water, but in doing that, when your pH and alkalinity are in the recommended ranges for hot tub water care, 7.2 to 7.6, those are the optimal ranges that support the efficacy and the efficiency of a sanitizer. So the only thing that Silk Balance doesn't do for your water is it doesn't sanitize your water, but you use less chemicals, you use less sanitizer, your salt generator has to generate less chlorine when your pH is in the optimal ranges, because it's more effective and more efficient.
Yeah.
So it's really simple to use. It's just, we have two different applications for our water conditioner, either in the liquid form that you add to the spa once a week, or the dissolving silk. We call them silk gems, but they're pods, just like the Tide Pods.
Right.
And that's the simplest way that application for spa water care. One of the other things that Silk Balance does is it keeps all of the particles suspended in the water instead of allowing it to settle on the surfaces. And when you have the different particles and bacteria settling on the surface is when you can start to have the problems, the gunk and the slime build up in the plumbing lines.
Right.
By keeping it in the suspended in the water, it allows it to be in a place where the chlorine or the bromine or the chlorine from your salt generator can destroy it. So it also helps with keeping everything clean and clear.
I think if you work in the industry and you know anything about water chemistry, you know this, but I don't think the average consumer realizes like how much the pH and alkalinity, like how much that piece of it actually affects like their comfort, right? Like, because a lot of times, like that is the stuff that's causing eye irritation and skin irritation is when those things are not in balance. It's, I mean, the sanitizer can play a part in it, but like, a lot of times that's what's causing those kinds of issues is just that your water is, is too acidic and you just, you if you're not if you just it just, if you're not the person doing that every day, it's just not something you understand or think about until it's a problem and you're like, "Oh, yeah, this is not good."
Yeah. And oftentimes, customers don't even really want to necessarily know. You have some of them that want to know all the science behind it. But customers, when they buy a hot tub, they buy a hot tub because they're investing in their wellness, right? They either want to get better sleep at night, or maybe they have, arthritis and they want some relief from some of that joint pain, or perhaps they are an athlete who goes skiing or who runs marathons, and getting in the hot tub before or after provides them a lot of relief. And all they really want is to know that when they open the hot tub to get in, It's going to be fresh and ready for them to enjoy. The worst thing is when you buy a hot tub with all these really high expectations of what your wellness journey is going to be like through water. And you open up the lid and there's something really funky going on with a hot tub. But it's really
Yeah.
easy for that to happen. But it's
Oh,
also
yeah.
really simple to prevent that. And, so that's really what Silk Balance does is it acts as a problem preventer instead of a problem solver. And so in addition to the stability of the pH and the alkalinity and the feel of the softness of the water and the softness of your skin, it also, in the long term, protects the components of the spa from premature erosion. Because, like you said, the acidicness of the pH not only
Yeah.
affects the comfort of the water, but it also will affect the components over the long period of time. And
Mhm.
you're not going to be able to go back in time to change that. All you can do is call somebody in to replace your part and have downtime on your hot tub. So that's another kind of key benefit of Silk Balance. But going back to what you were saying about pH and alkalinity, it really is the important pillars of where you start with your water chemistry. When I'm teaching water care classes, some people will say, well, does alkalinity really matter? How much does pH really matter? And I always say to them, I'm like, listen, our test strips have all of these things on them for a reason. And it's
Mhm.
because they all have to work in tandem and with harmony to make the water really great for you. They're not just extra colors to make the test strip look, fun and more pretty,
Yeah.
but they're really important components. And that's one thing about our industry, regardless of, the different types of products and the different types of offerings, we all have to agree on the same kind of science for it. It's how you decide to treat the behavior of the water and what you treat it with. And
Yeah.
that's really, I think, why we've had such long-term success with our water conditioner is we keep the promise of what the customer expects from it by making water really simple for them.
Yeah. So you were, out living your life. You had, these other careers that you had, been doing before your dad started Silk Balance. So when he got this company going and launched this new product, I mean, did you, in your wildest dreams, think that is where you would end up? Did you have any desire to do that at all?
No, absolutely not. Even when I first heard about Silk Balance, I had never gone in a hot tub that had anything other than traditional chemicals. So I was always
Sure.
used to a bit of irritation. I was always used to the smell of what you smelt like going in and going out of it. I know my friends who don't use Silk Balance in their hot tubs because I can smell their hot tub or I can smell
Sure.
them when they get out of it. And it wasn't until
Okay,
I
wait, do you
actually
give them a hard time? Are you like, "Hello, do you know what I do? What is wrong with you?"
well, the first thing I do is say, you know what? I need to use Clean Start, which is our plumbing line flush. I need to use
Yeah,
Clean Start in your hot tub because that brings me a lot of joy is to show people what comes out of their plumbing lines.
right? There is something, like, oddly satisfying about that, like, being like, "Oh my gosh, that was in there and I got it out." It just yeah, it just makes me so happy to clean things.
It's so satisfying, but it's also at the same time so gross. So I
Oh,
think
I know.
I think a lot of people don't really see that. But yeah, definitely. I won't get in someone's hot tub, when you can there's something if you can smell it, there's something wrong.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. But sorry, that was a side note. So you didn't I mean, you were just like, "Nah, this is not for me. This isn't really something I'm interested in."
No, I mean, not at all. I didn't really know anything about the hot tub industry and how it worked. I knew that I liked going in hot tubs when, the water was clear and it smelled fine.
Yeah.
But I didn't really start to get involved until I went to the very first trade show with my family and with the company. And I think it was in Orlando.
Okay.
And gosh, it was so long ago. And it was the first time, it must have been 2010. So 16 years ago. And I remember walking into the trade show and I just couldn't believe what it looked like behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
All the manufacturers, all their products. But what really struck me about this industry and why I think it's so unique is the friendships and the camaraderie and the relationships and how many family businesses are within this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So did you I mean, was your dad just like, "Hey, we gotta do this trade show. I need some help. Will you just come along and help me out?" Is that kinda how you ended up there?
Yeah, I mean, my sister went as well. And,
Okay.
it was also, it wasn't just, do you want to come along? It was also, I want to show you what it is that we're doing as this business, why you get to meet some of the people that sell our products. And he was really big on that relationship with our retailers and dealers,
Yeah.
because if they're not selling our product, then we're not successful. So it was a chance to just really connect with seeing the reverberation of the impact that it has. Because there's the end user that gets to use their hot tub, but in between, a manufacturer gets to help other people build businesses and help them create some business stability. So, like I said, Silk Balance started in 2007. And then we all know what happened with the economy in 2008.
Yeah.
And
Wait, the year that I started in the hot tub industry, it was a great
yes,
year.
yeah, yeah. So you were in a trade show with my dad before I was.
Possibly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, probably. And it's funny because when you said 2007, I was like, oh man. So when I started in the industry, I mean, Silk Balance was still relatively new. I mean, to me, it's like, oh, it's always been there. But yeah, when I started, it would have been a pretty new product. So it was just kind of taking me back a little bit too.
Yeah, well, we were the first ones to come out with something that was so innovative and more about water care, moving away from the traditional chemicals. There's some other products that are in our space now, but we were really the forefront of that innovation and bringing that to introducing that in North America. And, going to the first trade show was really my first inroad into seeing what that looked like. A
Yeah.
few years later, I remember my father said to me, I had left the alcohol industry and I was working for doing some different consulting. And he said, well, can you come in and help us with some of our social media? And he actually said, can you come in and Facebook Silk Balance? Like Facebook booking was a verb.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not.
And I was like, wait, I said, I will create and help with the evolution of their social media presence and, bringing it kind of online.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to my dad, I'll come and do that, but don't make me go in sales. Whatever you do, I don't want to go into sales.
Sure.
I
Sure.
don't want to go on the road. I don't want to go into sales. I'll just want to do marketing. That was
Yeah.
what I like doing.
So that's where, I mean, so how long was it until you were in sales?
Well, you know what? It's interesting because the second that I started doing it, it's really when I learned that if you're in marketing, you're in sales. If you're in sales, you're in marketing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the whole purpose of it, like maybe I'm not in marketing, you're not transactional where you're actually booking a purchase, but you are selling something. So when I kind of realized that, I realized I'm like, I already am in sales. I'm just
Mm,
not in sales where I'm going out to dealers and working on, building their
yeah.
water care presence and stuff like that. So the evolution, when I look back at it, it feels like it happened quickly, but it probably happened quicker than I realized, but it wasn't an intentional evolution. But the
Yeah.
more I spent in the industry and the more people that I met, the more I was like, industry is amazing. I love this industry. I love the people. I love the product. I love what it does for the end user. And now, I guess all these years later, 16 years later,
Yeah.
here I am.
Yep, here we are. You know, it's funny, that's so true about sales and marketing because yes, I would also have said, when I came out of grad school, I would not have been interested in a sales job at all. I don't want to do sales. Like that would not be what my interests where my interests would have lied at all. However, pretty much anything that you do, part of it, there is a salesmanship aspect, right? Like even being a journalist, so much of what you're trying to do is, get people to do this interview and, kind of convince them to come on board and work on this story. You know, and then there's, the story has come out and in a way you're kind of, it's part of what more of our jobs are than I think we want to admit.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's definitely the sort of how I evolved. And I also realized once I kind of became more in sales that my sales became a lot easier when it was more about storytelling than it was about, trying to actually transactionally sell a product.
Yeah.
And the storytelling comes from being able to be really good at marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. What was it like coming into this company as, the founder's daughter? I mean, was that a weird thing? I mean, this industry is made up of family businesses. It's not unusual by any means, but But yeah, how was that transition for you? I mean, was that an awkward thing or was it fine working with your dad? I mean, how did that go?
Well, I think when you're coming into a company and there's a family member, there's just as much of an opportunity as there is a challenge, right? There's no shortcut when you're a founder's daughter. And
Nope.
if anything, I think the expectations can be higher. The expectations, I was really aware that I had to earn the credibility. It wasn't just assumed.
Yeah.
So I had to be,
Yeah.
so we were talking about Colin Taylor, our chemist at the very beginning. I spent a lot of time with Colin. I wanted to learn everything I possibly could about water chemistry, even if it was something that had nothing to do with our product itself. And that was really, I think, how I approached it, was feeling that it was harder for me to prove myself and gain that credibility. Yeah, just to really prove myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, the children who work in their parents' businesses, I feel like, yeah, you could either go, like, you kind of go one or two ways, right? Like, they're the ones that come in and it's like they feel like this is their birthright and they, kind of, they're owed it, they kind of have that sense. And yeah, and then there's the people who come in and they're like, I'm going to prove to you that I deserve to be here, not because my dad founded this company, but because I am, capable and qualified in my own right. And I feel like you can kind of go one of two ways with that.
Yeah, I mean, my there was definitely no nepotism. I did everything from, starting off with social media and our website to, on the road sales and dealer acquisitions, to even when we were introducing a new water care kit, and if there was something going on with our production, I've actually built the kits myself by hand, putting them together, putting the products in the kit,
Yeah.
building the master cases and putting them on pallets. So I've done everything. I've touched every part of how the business works. And it was partially because I was interested in it, because I think that how you grow is by knowing as much as you can about everything that goes on in the business, but also because I really felt this obligation to earn credibility through the knowledge that I had, not because of what my last name was.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the other side of it, the actually working with family? Yeah, it can be great. It can be really dysfunctional.
Yeah, I look back now and I think, there was years and years and years and years where I would go to work and I would be with my father for 40 to 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
And some of that was a challenge, right? Because it was my dad. There's different conversations that you have with your dad. There's different filters that you have with your dad.
Yeah.
And I had to learn really quickly that when it came to the team that would watch what that looked like, especially at the beginning, they were looking to see what that dynamic looked like, because they
Yeah.
were like, is she going to be my equal or is she going to be entitled, like you had mentioned? And I think that the challenge really was, what does my work voice look like? Because my dad was my boss. So I
Mhm.
have to have those boundaries and those filters that existed that weren't necessarily there at Sunday at dinner, when my dad would say something and I'd be like, that's the silliest idea that I've ever heard, but you can't say
Yeah.
that around a boardroom table
Right.
to your,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's gotta be a hard thing to navigate. Cause yeah, I mean, how you treat your boss and how you treat your dad are two different things. And so, yeah, how do you find that balance? And like, I love how you put that. How do I find my voice and what is that gonna sound like? And not just tone, obviously, but like, words as well. Like when I'm speaking to my dad at work as my boss versus, Sunday dinner. Yeah, that has to be kind of and especially when you don't necessarily like when you don't grow up in it, when you kind of come in later.
mm,
Yeah, that's got to be a really interesting thing to have to navigate.
yeah, it was, I look back and I think about, because when you get older, a lot of times people can get to the point where you see your family for different occasions, birthdays and Christmas, and,
Yeah.
there's a family holiday. But my Monday to Friday and my trade shows and, traveling with my dad, there was all these different kinds of things. And traveling with your dad, you know, going to Disneyland on a vacation is different than when you're traveling with your dad to Atlantic City during a massive snowstorm and,
Yep.
you don't know
Yep.
where your boot is and there's all this kind of stress going on. So yeah, it's just really different. But, my dad passed away a couple of years ago, and I look back at that. And what I am so grateful for is to have that unique time, to have had that
Yeah.
unique time with him, but also
Yeah.
to have seen him in a very different way than most children get to see their parents, right? So they don't
Yeah.
necessarily get to see their parents in a professional atmosphere. I got to see my dad creating businesses and helping build businesses for dealers and retailers, and the people that have been a part of our team over the year. What does all that look like? And you get to see a very different side of your parent. And I'm, really proud. And it was a really it's an amazing part of the memory that I have of my dad.
Yeah. What was it like? I mean, you mentioned that he passed away a couple of years ago. When he did get sick and you had to step into some more of the roles that he held, I mean, how was that? I feel like that is something that has happened to a lot of children who've worked in businesses with their parents. It's not always well planned for, and you kind of have to like just jump and do the things, whether you're ready or not, while at the same time, dealing with the grief or the health of your loved one. It's just got to be such a hard thing to balance.
Yeah, I think that hindsight, what I would have done and we didn't do is talk about succession planning. And I think that you've
Yeah.
done a lot for Spa Retailer, providing articles and interviewing different people. I think that, even if succession planning isn't directly with family, it's succession planning with the different roles within your company. I think that's really important because it doesn't become something's on fire now. What do you need to do?
Yeah.
My father became ill and left the company in 2020. So that was a unique time because it was COVID,
Oh, goodness. Yeah,
right?
how about let's deal with a whole bunch of things we've never had to deal with in our lives and then throw that in.
Yeah, so it was probably one of the hardest, but the most defining periods for me. So I think that because COVID and we were a lot more restrictive up here in Canada, there was no travel, there was none of
Yeah.
that could go on. I had a little bit more time to learn how to do the things that he did that I would not have had to do if I was still doing as much travel and there was as much, because I'm really big with my industry involvement. And that really changed to Zoom only interactions. So, in part, the COVID timing for that was beneficial because there was more opportunity for me to learn. But I think what I learned the most about that experience is when he became sick and left was that, the responsibility, the transparency, and working with the different people that we had as a part of the team was really important. And, I had to focus on stability for the company, stability for our partners, for our vendors. And that taught me resilience, clarity under pressure, and the importance of strength and empathy. And so, yeah, there were some really hard things, and there were some things that I had to learn, but you always find a way to go through it, especially if you really believe in something, you're really passionate about something. And,
Yeah.
I am really passionate about this industry and about our products. So you just find a way and you really lean on the people that are around you to support you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does help if you have a good team already in place that can, yeah, like you said, help you out and guide you and, be there to support you as you try to figure out, what your new role looks like and
What's the new
responsibilities.
normal?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we were all trying to do that at that time for sure. If it's interesting hearing you talk about, I mean, about all of this because you are so passionate about the industry and wellness and and what we do and how the products that our industry provides, how they impact people's lives. And so it's just kind of funny because I can't envision a time where that wasn't, like your thing. And so, I mean, do you think that's what kept you in the industry? I mean, really was kind of that, that growing passion for everything that we provide and the people in it?
I think so. I mean, I love the fact that our industry, hot tubs and even, saunas and cold plunges and all those different
Right.
kinds of things, those are things that regardless of what age, and for the most part, what physical condition that you're in, everyone can engage in that, right? So there's not
Yeah.
too many things that I can think of out there where, somebody who's 20 years old and somebody who's 80 years old are able to get some benefit. And those benefits are really, if you commit to a wellness program through water or through, hydrotherapy or heat therapy or hot water immersion or whatever that is,
Yeah.
the effects of that, not only psychologically, but physically, are really can be really profound, and they have really long-term benefits for people. So yeah, I'm super passionate about the industry. Yeah, I can't imagine doing anything else, but it's really cool to
Yeah.
be able to make an impact, right? I think that's a really important part of defining who you are and where your career wants to go is if you have a component where you understand what kind of impact that you're making and whether that's a positive impact. And I think that when you can be a part of something where you're making people's lives better through something that's really simple for them to engage in, that's a pretty amazing thing to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you really do need that why. I feel like no matter what job you're doing, you need a reason to show up that's beyond like making a paycheck to really get that personal satisfaction out of it for
Mhm.
sure. What are I'm glad you talked about succession planning because I mean, that is something that I am passionate about. Just because, I've interviewed so many small business owners in our industry over the years and people who have family businesses. And, I've seen the people who've done it right. And I've seen the devastation when it's not done at all or
Mhm.
done poorly. And it's just something that is not an easy thing to think about. It's not an easy thing to plan for, but it's just so essential. And it's so essential to start it now, right? Like I should be thinking about succession planning now, not in 15 years. It's like this is something that needs to be at the forefront of like, well, if something happens, like what happens next? And having a plan in place is just so important. And it's not something that we like to think about. We don't like thinking about our own mortality.
No, I mean, I think it's the same thing with your will and your estate in your personal life. I think it's something that a business should be looking at every single year. It should be a part of your, you have a marketing strategy for the year. You have the sales strategy. Everyone does their budgets. There's all these different kinds of things that you do that are really important as a part of the business planning, but you should really incorporate that part of the success. The hardest part of succession planning is really laying the foundation and the groundwork and then updating
Yeah.
it every single year as the business changes, as the business priorities change. Maybe you want to expand into new markets or you want to bring on new products or you want to look at different partnerships within the industry. But you can look at the evolution of what all that looks like. But I think it's really important to revisit that succession planning within the business. And I think succession planning is also really helpful for your team around you too. You don't
Yeah.
have to tell them everything that's going on, but if you kind of give them a bit of a roadmap to where you're going, I think people will be surprised at who steps up to say, I want to be a part of this, or, different people who want to take on different roles or maybe be a part of that. There's an opportunity as well to really, bring your team together, look at the different departments and, look at the people that are within it that can be a part of the success of that succession plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I think it really helps. I think it can help clarify your vision for your company too. I think when you think, what does the end game look like, it really helps you clarify where you want to go and how you want to get there. And it's not until you start asking yourselves those types of questions, I think, until some of that stuff can really come into focus. And once it is, it makes every decision so much easier. When like this is the end game, it really helps some of those granular things that you have in front of you now. It's like, does this fit this ultimate vision that we have for this company? And if it's a yes or a no, it just makes it so much easier to do that in
Yeah.
the day to day too.
Yeah.
So, in addition to just the health and wellness aspect of it, you know, the way that I feel like, have met and gotten to know each other is working through different women's groups in the industry. And being an advocate for women in the industry is something I think we both care a lot about and are passionate about. Why is that for you? I mean, why is that something that is so important to you in your life and what you do?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, I came through some pretty male dominated industries,
Yeah.
real estate development, alcohol, and then now in the wellness industry. I remember when I was in real estate development, I really liked what they were doing in project management, and I was interested in exploring that. And I went to part of what they did is that they would go to City Hall for these hearings and they would talk about this. We want to build this big 30-story tower. And, I was interested. So I thought, this hearing is at 7 o'clock at night. I'm going to go to it with our development managers. And it was because I was interested in growing and learning and maybe seeing if there was a direction for me to go into that, development side of it. And I remember somebody at work saying to me, that's not really where women go in this industry. So you probably just wasted your time going to that meeting. And that was I was like, oh, wow. Why isn't it where women go? And it was just because it was traditionally male dominated, but it was really deflating. And I just really didn't like what I heard,
Yeah.
but I was young at the time. So I kind of, I didn't really know what to do with it. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess why would I waste my time? I guess I'll just, stick to marketing or, whatever else it was that I was doing at the time. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting when I came into this industry, my first trade show in 2010 or 2011, and, even the subsequent years is there really wasn't a lot of female representation within the industry in roles that were, women leading technical conversations or leadership conversations or women owning business. That's changed a lot. And I think the narrative is completely different now. But that's why I kind of have been a part of it for as long as I have, is because I've lived it. There's some incredibly talented women, but I felt like, their voices may be being minimized because you have to break through getting women into those roles a little bit. So I became really passionate about creating that space for women, creating that opportunity for them to not change who they are, but just to know that they are just as capable and talented and bring something different to the table that is really important. And that was something that I didn't really see. When you walk into a trade show floor, and Megan, you probably remember 2008, you walked
Yeah.
into a trade show floor, there was very few people who looked the way we looked, right?
Yeah.
You didn't see yourself within the industry, and now you're starting to do that, which I think
Yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. Like my experience as a woman working in this industry has by and large been very positive. It's like you never really felt that in a kind of an overt way. It's always kind of in these little areas where you see some of those things come out that kind of make you uncomfortable or kind of make you like, "Oh, I didn't realize that like I wasn't really welcome in that space," or it's always it's not ever was never anything it's never anything overt. Like my experience in this industry has always been overwhelmingly positive. But
Mm.
it has been really great to see over the last few years because when I started, all the women that I knew working in the industry were working in communications, were working in marketing. You just didn't see people in those operational roles at manufacturers or in the small family businesses. It was like you didn't see them in the operations, you didn't see them as technicians, you didn't see them, running the financial side of the company. And so, or if
They
you
weren't the pool
were,
builders,
yeah,
they were maybe scheduling, but they weren't actually out there digging the hole.
yeah, exactly. And so it's just been really exciting to see more women step into some of those other types of roles. And I think it benefits the industry at large. You just bring a different perspective as a woman and not necessarily a better perspective, just different. And I think that helps, balance companies out in a way that's unexpected sometimes. And so it's been a really it's just been a really interesting and fun to watch and participate in to see that change happen. And I think too, I see a lot more daughters taking over companies, which is really exciting too. It just warms my heart.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I do have to give a shout out to there's so many amazing men in this industry as well that are willing to support the advancement of women.
Like,
I think there's always a place for the woman, but it's whether or not we can get through some of these unconscious bias we have to, like if you remove two people's names off of a resume and just looked at what their abilities were in their education, whether or not that they're a good fit. Sometimes that might be easier for women to move into leadership roles. That's evolved, but it is because there is this evolution of the openness and the willing
yes,
to look at, is there some biases that exist and how do we move through those biases to make sure that because I think for me, when I think about women in the industry, I think that for me, it's about striving for parity. It's not about trying to carve out a completely different place for women. It's just
yeah,
about, the equalization of people.
yeah. Yeah, and as we talk about women in the magazine, and as we do those kinds of things, I get a little nervous sometimes, like, is this gonna are people going to react to this negatively? Is it going to seem like we're, pushing an agenda or something like that? And I kind of get nervous. But the fun thing is that, like, it's really like the men in the industry who get really excited about this. And they're like, no, we have this amazing person in our company that you need to know about. And that's been really cool because it's, yeah, that openness and that willingness is there. And it's, you know, I love the idea of, it's not advocating for one group. It doesn't mean you're taking away anything from another. And I really feel that in our industry, that people
Mhm.
see it that way. And it just makes it so much more, it makes it so much more fun because I want to highlight everybody in the industry. And for the longest time, it's just the women were kind of unseen. And so I feel like now collectively, we're all like, oh no, you need to understand who this person is, who this woman is, and what she's been doing that's made us what we are today. And it's just so wholesome and enjoyable, and it's been really lovely.
Well, Megan, you do such a good job of shining the light on people that deserve to have the light shone on them, not only for what you do for women in the industry, but the recognizing of the 40 under 40 and the 30 under 30 and the different things that you do to really celebrate people. And I think that's the evolution of our industry, not just for women, but I feel like the industry has evolved as well, where we are this collective support for each other, whether you're a competitor, or whether you're somebody who, operates in a completely different space. I feel like that there is this sort of industry collective that's coming together that is really rooting for everybody's success, which is another reason why I really love this industry. For the most part, everybody is rooting for your success. And, that's a pretty amazing industry to be a part of.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, it's like even, there's some fierce competition in our industry, right? Like there is for sure. And so I feel like even within that, you've started to see, like you said, that desire for us all to collectively succeed, the floats all boats mentality. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. High tide raises all ships.
100%. So, what do you see for Silk Balance going forward? What are your aspirations and hopes and dreams for the company as you kind of move into this next chapter?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of advances in the technology in hot tubs.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we want to make sure is that our offerings are still aligned and can still make, the company's still able to provide offerings to customers that continue to enhance that. So it's all about simplicity, and that's, I think, has been one of the core foundations of who we are. We want to help retailers and dealers create sustainable revenue streams, and I think that's one of the things that we have an amazing product. We have a protected patent technology, which is all great, but what we're really, I think, looking at now is being a part of the education and also being a part of helping the retailers, the brick and mortar stores still remain viable and successful, because the landscape of how customers interact with products has changed so much over the past 20 years. When you start to have the, e-commerce and online, and people are buying everything online now, the sustainability of the brick and mortar is still is something that is on the top of people's minds. So making sure that we can still, support the retailers and the teams so that they can support their customers.
Yeah. And and honestly, like that plays such a huge part in succession planning too, right? Is those, if you want to sell your business, you need to show those sustainable recurring revenue streams to the buyer and to the bank. And so like that stuff is so important. You don't want those ups and downs. You want to have something that's really solid and steady. And it becomes such an important part of putting that kind of stuff together.
Yeah. So looking how we can continue to support that, looking at evolving some of our offerings wherever they need to be evolved. We've always been Sustainability has always been a part of our at the forefront as well. So I think that's something that we'll continue to invest in, is looking to make sure that we are, always staying true to your values as well. I think it's really
Right.
easy for people to get lost, for companies to get lost and to not be aligning. I think you have to constantly recalibrate to make sure that you are aligned with what your core values are. So that's something that we, will continue to make sure that we're always doing that. So anything with technology integration, anything like that is we're always looking at that and expanding to more markets. Oh, Megan, you froze.
Are you ready for the Spa Retailer 5?
Oh, sorry, you just froze. Did you hear me at the end?
Yes, I
Okay.
did. Yes, you also froze, but the audio has been coming through fine. So
Oh, great.
we'll go with that.
Technology. See, I mean, it does. I always say this to people, it's got to go to the moon and back, and technology doesn't always work. So,
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to check in to make sure that
Yeah.
it's
No,
working.
we're all good. But are we good for the Spa Retailer 5?
Yeah, let's do the Spa
Okay.
Retailer 5.
All right. So, do you remember your very first sale in the hot tub industry?
So I know who the very first customer for Silk Balance was, and that was
Oh,
Olympic Hot Tub.
oh, sure, of course.
Yep. Yeah. My favorite, sweet Alice Cunningham, who owned Olympic at the time. They were our
Yeah,
very first customer. Don Reiling, who is a friend, an amazing person, owns Olympic now, and they are still one of our biggest customers. All these years later, 19 years
yeah,
later,
yeah.
I don't remember my first sale, but I do remember one of the very first times that I went out and did a product training, and at the time it was called Pullman, but now it's called Texas Hot Tub, who's another big
Sure.
customer of ours.
Yeah.
And I remember that one of the reasons I remember it was because I was so terrified. And I think I brought notes, and it was almost like I was back in grade 12 trying to memorize a monologue for my drama class to make sure that I was getting graded on making sure that I got everything right because I didn't want to screw up. But I
Yeah.
remember that was a really scary thing for me to do.
I love that. What was your first real job?
Oh gosh. People have asked me this in the past, and on very rare occasions will I be honest about it. But, since it's just you and I, my first job was when I was 13 years old. I know it was really young. I played soccer. I loved soccer. For anyone listening in the UK or Europe, it's football.
Right.
But I loved soccer, and I played it since I was quite young. And my soccer team was looking at different ways of raising some money. And we were able to get a job as a team, a few of us, it was at the time, it was called the Vancouver 86ers. Now it's the Vancouver Whitecaps. And what we were supposed to do is just take tickets. And I think we were, just being whatever we were doing there. But somehow I was convinced to be the team mascot.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, there is some picture somewhere. And what the mascot was, it was a giant soccer ball, and
Oh,
they would put it over top of my head. And all you could see was my feet and my soccer cleats at the bottom. And I would walk around at the beginning of the game and take pictures with people or before the game started. And then at the beginning of every game, before the game started, I would walk out to the middle of the soccer field, and one of the soccer players, and there was 15,000 people in the
yeah.
stands watching the soccer game. And one of the players would pretend to kick me, and I would run towards the goal of the opposing team. And I always scored the first goal. And the crowd went wild. And I think back at that, and I remember, it's me with my legs and my hands sticking out and a giant soccer ball running towards the goalie. And the other team, it really had no idea what was going on. So the faces
Sure.
of there were these men in their 20s, and there's this 13-year-old girl wearing a giant soccer ball. So I was Miss Ball, the mascot for the Vancouver
There it
80s.
is. That's a very creative name,
Yeah.
Miss
Yeah.
Ball. That's amazing. I mean, would you get nervous going out there as a kid on the middle of the field, or did it? I mean, they couldn't see you, so it didn't really phase you.
They couldn't see me.
Yeah.
I wasn't nervous when I was taking pictures with people. They couldn't see me, and I thought it was really cool. I was always nervous that because it was quite a giant soccer ball, I was always nervous that I was going to trip and actually roll into the
Yeah.
net.
I would be too.
Yeah. But even now
What
when I go to different, hockey games or football games or whatever, I have this connection with the mascots
as you should. That's
and
amazing. I mean, that is like obvious we get some interesting first jobs on the podcast, but that's a new one. We have
yeah.
not had a mascot on the podcast before. So
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's never been on my CV, but it was definitely I look back at it fondly now. My
yeah.
husband is always asking for pictures of Miss Ball, and I think that there might be one in my mom's trunk somewhere. I'll have to look.
Oh, well, if you dig it up, you should send it along to us.
And maybe.
So looking back over your career, what would you say has been like the biggest flop, I like to say, that you have tried? It doesn't have to be at Silk Water Solutions, but something that you thought was really going to knock it out of the park and then just fell flat.
So it wasn't a product, but this is an easy answer. And this
Okay.
was at Silk Water. This was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. We decided to bring in this new CRM system.
Oh.
And yeah, I know everybody sighs. I won't say
Yeah,
which one
everyone
it was.
knows. Everybody knows the pain of this, Susan. We all have been there and with varying success.
Oh, I have to tell you, it was the way that the expectations that I had for it, where it was going to make everything from reporting to customer follow up to creating this database. And it
Yep.
was supposed to be this thing that saved so much time and centralized the information. And, it was so shiny and exciting. And then when we started to implement it, it was really expensive. If you needed to ask a question about it, you had to write a ticket and then
Yeah.
someone would get back to you, but they would only get back to you in sending you the clip of a video of how to do it.
Yeah.
And we must have tried it for about a year and a half and maybe even longer. I can't remember now. It was quite a while ago. And that was I think the biggest mistake because I
Yeah.
felt like there was so much time, so many people spent on our team spent time trying to figure out how to use it and zero time actually using it that
Yeah.
we ended up completely downloading all our information, going to a different system. And I think that was probably the worst and the biggest flop of an idea is to bring that in. The idea itself was really
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
but the
I
product that we chose was a disaster and it
I
was
feel
so
like
expensive.
I feel like there needs to be a handbook for small business owners on how to make how to make software decisions because this is also the bane of my existence. I feel like we have tried so many things. We spend so much money a year on software for the size of our company. And it's just like, I feel like maybe I'm looking for a unicorn. I don't know. But it's just like, I need something that I can follow that will tell me what to look for and how to know if it's going to be a good fit. And then, because yeah, I tell you what, man, it's tough. It's tough. And yeah, guaranteed you are not the only person who has a very similar story when it comes to CRM software.
Yeah, it's such an important thing to integrate systems into your business, regardless if you're a manufacturer, if you're a
Yeah.
vendor, or if you're a retailer, because it can create, it can add more revenue and free up a lot of time for you.
Yeah.
But you also have to have the right software, ask the right questions when you're going into to consider bringing it, and
Yep.
really assess what you need. And, that we thought we had nailed it and we didn't. And the learning from that was, I think that what I learned is next time not to take so long to make a change. Like changes
Yeah.
hard times are hard to do, but you're never going to get back that, all of that time leakage that you've had.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's so hard with stuff like that because yeah, you have such high hopes and then yeah, you get into it and it's like, well, maybe we're just not, we just got to figure this out or we just got to fix this one thing and then it'll be what we expect it to be and then yeah, it's hard to know like when is that tipping point of we're done. This is
Yeah.
not going to work for us. I mean, it's funny that we're having this conversation and that's what you said because before we got on this call, that was my call was with someone I was just like, you've got to help us. This is this has been the problem since the beginning and it still is not solved. And I need someone to tell me how to fix this. So what about the flip side? So what would you say it's like this is the best idea that you have tried? I feel like this one's sometimes harder.
I have to say, when it comes to technology, I live in my calendar. So
Mm.
while this isn't something new, the Google Calendar is something that I I love because it helps really keep me completely organized.
Yeah.
There's some new things that are coming out in terms of how you can, manage different systems and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think for Silk Water Solution, I think the biggest thing that we have done is our commitment to education and our commitment to talking to other people that are in kind of the same space so that we can have an agreed upon science that we're all doing. I think that's going to be a game changer for our retailers and a
Yeah.
game changer for how they, continue to trust their retailers. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
our product itself is a pretty big win. If I
Yeah.
look back at how we've evolved when different manufacturers came out with different systems, we were quick to look at what we needed to do to tweak or change that formula and then refile for a patent right away so that we were compatible with everything. And that's been a big
Yeah.
win for us is making sure that our products are long-term sustainable with all the changes. So that's something that
Yeah.
we've, looking our Silk Balance Plus, which is compatible with all saltwater systems. That came out in, I want to say 2020 or 2021 or during COVID. So it was
Yeah.
a challenge to launch it, but that was a big game changer for us. It was to make sure that we can still be a part of the new hot tubs that are going out.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite book, TV show, podcast, something that you have either learned a lot from or just get some enjoyment and relaxation out of?
Well, I have to say one of my favorite podcasts is the Spa Retailer
Oh,
Podcast.
sure. Yes.
No,
Yes. Thank you. Please tell me more.
I'm not just saying that because you're my friend, but because I have quite a long commute to work every morning. I have an hour commute each
Oh,
direction.
yikes.
So I have a choice whether or not I'm going to listen to the news about all of the different traffic situations that are going on, or I can download a Spa Retailer podcast and find out what's going on in the industry. So I really like that because it makes me feel connected to what's going on. I don't have to wait to find out at a trade show or a conversation. The things that you do and the different people that you bring on are really interesting. So that is one of my favorite podcasts. I also really like true crime podcasts.
Oh, yeah, girl.
I am a
Same.
crime. I love it. I love watching. Yeah, I feel like I have a little bit of, I could almost get my law degree with all of the true
Oh,
crime podcasts that I've listened to.
I think there's a part of us that all feel that way, right? Like
Yeah,
I could be,
100%.
I'd be a detective for sure.
Oh, I was just going to say my favorite TV show, Law and Order SVU.
Oh,
Um, I
classic.
would, Detective Olivia Benson. I am a huge fan. I love that show.
I
And
do. I feel like when you travel a lot for work and you end up in all these random hotel rooms and, you're by yourself and you need something to like listen to or watch as you're trying to fall asleep or whatever. I mean, being a true crime fan is very helpful in that because there is a plethora of, if you are on just like the standard no Netflix TV, you better believe there is a Law and Order that you can watch
oh,
or Forensic Files or
yeah,
there's
48 hours.
Oh, yeah, there will be something for you no matter where you find yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one that I love is the Gilmore Girls. I can watch the Gilmore Girls on repeat.
Oh my gosh. So last year, our oldest daughter had surgery, and, so we had a lot of time just laying around, the two of us in bed. And that was the show that we decided to start watching together was Gilmore Girls. And so we haven't made it through the whole thing yet, but yeah, she is also a fan. And so that was a really fun thing that we could do together as a mother and daughter is watch the Gilmore Girls while she recuperated.
Everybody loves Lorelai and Rory.
Yep, they sure do. Well, Susan,
Uh,
thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was fun to get to chat with you and learn some more about you. And yeah, I really appreciate it and I, appreciate our friendship and everything that you have done for us and for the industry and for women. It's been really a pleasure to get to know you these last few years.
well, thank you so much for having me. I am so honored to be your friend and to be on this podcast and really appreciate you taking the time out. And I look forward to seeing you. Well, I mean, this is getting recorded before Atlantic City. So we're all crossing our fingers that
Yep.
the massive storm coming, we're all coming in a day early now, which is, it's a bit of
Could
a
be fun.
challenge sometimes when you have to change your travel, but that means that those of us we know that are going in early get to see each other a day early. So I
That's
will
right.
see you on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. The Spa Retailer Podcast is a production of Spa Retailer Magazine. Let us know what you think by leaving a review or emailing us at podcast@sparetailer.com. Thanks for listening.